Incense is that church smell that invites us to be transformed, to spend our lives for others, to be the aroma of Christ in the world, and to know that we are one small part of the great cloud of witnesses, the communion of earthly and heavenly saints, gathered in worship around the throne of God.
Incense cleanses the air and makes the space sacred and prepares the way for the holiness of the rites and rituals of the church, and blesses the people who have come to celebrate those rites and rituals.
One thing I love about not just incense, but the liturgy of the church in general, is the genius of how it reaches out to our senses.
Our sense of smell is one of the most acute senses we have.
But incense, we know now, psychologists tell us, it can be one of the most powerful symbols and reminders of what it is we're doing in the context of the liturgy, precisely because it uses the sense of smell.
The aromatic smell of incense reminds us that this is the scent of our church home, our community, and our prayer together. We would recognize it anywhere, and it settles us into a familiar place, wherever we are.
Now think about it for a moment. Perhaps you can remember a recipe, a dish that your grandmother cooked, something that really called to home, and for you meant more than just dinner time, which probably is appealing enough, but has that sense of being in a place of homeliness, of being comforted, of being welcomed.
Here in New Mexico, the fall air is filled with the aroma of freshly roasted green chili. The scent of perfume or cologne reminds us of loved ones. Smell triggers memories. I'll never forget the time shortly after my dad passed away. I walked into a church filled with the odor of incense. It immediately transported me back to my dad's funeral.
When we smell, that Catholic smell of incense, we know where and who we are. The smell triggers both emotion and memory, and it helps us to focus on our prayer.
Every Catholic knows when they smell incense that something important is happening, is about to happen, or has happened. Be it a beautiful Mass celebrating a great feast day, like one of the Marian feast days or Easter, or perhaps they're smelling it because we just had a very solemn celebration dedicating a church, or perhaps praying for the soul of a loved one who has just passed. But nevertheless, that scent sticks with us. It reminds us that something special has happened. It reminds us that something sacred is about.
Consider all of the things that are honored with incense in our worship. The altar, the cross, the book of the Gospels, the gifts of bread and wine, the Eucharist, the priest, the people gathered in worship. At funerals, the earthly remains of the deceased are incensed. During celebrations of saints, their images are incensed. The Easter candle is incensed during the Easter season or during evening prayer. Holy things and holy people, all these things are symbols of Christ.
It's always very touching for me to see when the people are incensed. A reminder to them of their special role. A reminder that indeed they are called to be a holy nation, a priesthood to the Lord.
In his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 15, verse 15, St. Paul reminds us that we are the aroma of Christ for others. When we, the gathered community of believers, are reverenced with incense in the liturgy, we are called to be that aroma, that sweet scent, that incense for others. Incense comes in a variety of fragrances, but incense is not only something we smell, it is something we see.
Incense, the plumes rising above the congregation, is always not just that olfactory reminder, but also a visual one. that God is in the midst of his people at prayer. And by their very act of participating, of being caught up in that mystery of what God is doing in their midst, that is pleasing to the Lord. Their presence is pleasing to the Lord.
When holy things and holy people are incensed, we see the smoke rising from the censer, carrying with it our prayers to God.
Incense lifts up our prayer. Psalm 141 says, "Let my prayer come like incense before you, the lifting of my hands like the evening sacrifice."
And have you ever looked up after incense has been used when the liturgy is over? There is a cloud of smoke hanging in the church. That cloud of incense reminds us that our participation in this earthly liturgy is a participation in the heavenly liturgy around God's throne.
The visual imagery of the smoke reminds us of the powerful transcendence of the Mass, which links heaven and earth.
For John writes in the book of Revelation, chapter 8, verses 3 and 4, "Another angel came and stood at the altar holding a gold censer. He was given a great quantity of incense to offer, along with the prayers of all the holy ones. On the gold altar that was before the throne, the smoke of the incense, along with the prayers of the holy ones, went up before God from the hand of the angel."
Incense kind of reminds us of the story of Jesus. The gold of the thurible, the frankincense, and myrrh remind us of the gifts that the Magi had at Christmas time. These gifts were brought to the child Jesus on the feast we celebrate as Epiphany. Jesus began his life with these gifts: gold for kingship, frankincense for divinity, and myrrh for sacrifice and death. After the death of Jesus, myrrh was used to prepare his body for burial. Frankincense and other spices were used by the women to care for his body. The 30 pieces of silver given to Judas might be remembered in a silver thurible. Incense provides a connection between the life and the death of Jesus.
The purpose of incense is to be burned, to be used up, to be spent.
It's a gift, reminding us to lift our hearts up, to lift our hopes up.
We are to be spent, to be burned, to be used up, to be incense for others.
And the presence of incense links the past to the future. It's been used for thousands of years. We use it at funerals, and it guides the soul of the dead to heaven. It allows us to enter into the presence of God, into a profound solemnity, mystery, and sanctity.